the Redwood Lodge last Thursday. A few Thursdays from now, we are hosting it here. I think that'll be our last meetup here at Redwood. And then we're going to find another location for the meetup and just keep our general meeting here. Once again, now that we're all quiet, just one more reminder to silence your cell phones. There is some food over here. If you do want food, just try and grab that before the main speaker starts so we don't have any interruptions and walking in front of cameras. I really appreciate it. The next thing is I do want to introduce Bernard up here. He has something briefly he wants to talk about, and then we'll get into the main speaker. So please help me welcome Bernard, our board member.
Hey, good evening. You know, last couple weeks ago, we had someone that was sharing some things about property management and just the essence of converting your real estate operation into something that's more of a business, not a hobby, not a, I got some money and then I spent some money and I think I made some money, but an actual business operation. And so in our last board meeting, it was a simple conversation that led to what kind of vendors will best benefit our members. And my mindset all this time has always been concrete guys, drywall guys, who does roofs, etc. The traditional renovation type of resources. But between your responses with the gentleman that came in as the insurance adjuster, that's not a hard-nosed, I'm fixing on your house type of vendor, I'm starting to think about areas and I want some feedback that we might be able to provide some additional business support so that you're operating a business. One of the hats that I wear is I'm a consultant with the Small Business Development Center of Michigan. Many of you, like me, up until about 3 years ago, I had no idea it existed. The SBA, federal government, and the NEDC, state government, come together and say, hey, it's in all of our best interest to make sure that business owners do well. So why don't we take a big stack of money from the federal government, you take a big stack of money from the Michigan government, and put it together to help small business owners. Guess what? That's you. And the more you see yourself that way, the more you start seeing that there's resources out there that are already paid for, so it costs you nothing. I'm mentioning this because we're going to provide some access to some other consultants with the SBDC. I work with a team that has an attorney on the team. Got a couple CPAs, retired bankers on the team, HR specialists. Some of you are out here paying contractors, but they're really employees. And at some point, you're going to have an issue with that. But you don't know it yet. It's going to be good to have someone you can talk to that's not going to hang you up on a ringer, but give you some advice on how to do it right. And so, all that being said, I'm curious, from a business operation standpoint, who here would benefit from hearing more from an accountant or bookkeeper? Okay? Accountant or bookkeeper. Someone who can track and help you report more effectively to the IRS. This is what came in, this is what went out. Even beyond the IRS, to help you to really recognize that house that you love so much, that you put 50 grand in, is actually not making enough to pay for itself. And now you've got something on paper to help you to smell the roses and say, sell it and reinvest it somewhere else. That's part of having a bookkeeper or an accountant. Who here would benefit from someone that can help them with some more insight on maybe proper structuring of your real estate business, an attorney of some sort? Raise it, show of hands. This is good. I like straight up answers because there's no need for me to bring somebody here to talk to you about something that you're not interested in. Is there anybody, and I'm saying this loose, it's probably narrow, but someone who's dealing with this employee-contractor dilemma? Like, I've got some contractors, but I got some folks that, you know, they sit in my office and they work for me all day. Anybody here have questions about the contractor-employee component? Is there any aspect of the business operation of your organization that I have not asked that you wish I would have asked about so that we can get you those resources?
Don't be shy, speak up.
How to keep them off Facebook.
I got some more info on the SBA loans.
Info on SBA loans? Okay, got it. You said something about Facebook?
How to keep them off Facebook.
Keep them off Facebook?
Yeah, your employees.
Oh, your employees off Facebook while they're in the office? Yeah, I hear you.
Hire employees without Facebook.
There you go. He said hire employees that don't use Facebook. There you go.
How to grow your business?
How to grow your business. Okay. If I asked another layer of depth to that question. Is there any particular aspect of growing the business that you'd like more information on?
Well, I was talking to this couple here, they're kind of comfortable in the area that they have their properties, I'm kind of comfortable in my area, and what do we do when we wanna move, we wanna, look at other areas?
Good. Okay. So what I hear then is, in a sense, and I'm not saying you've got to have some 50-page business plan. I'm not saying that, and frankly, most bankers don't want to read through all of that. But part of what I'm extracting from that is having a solid game plan or rough growth plan for your existing business so that you can say, hey, I've achieved some benchmarks. I'm stable, I'm content, I achieved what I set out to do. How do I either A, maintain what I'm already doing while adding another component to it, or can I make a calculated decision to close out that chapter and sell that off because I've made a good calculated decision on what this other opportunity is? Okay, got it. Anything else? You say without failing? You got that right. And frankly, in those transitions, some of you know this, you're brilliant, you've been there, done that. But in some of those kind of transitions is where you've got to have a CPA and the right attorney in place, because you may be missing an opportunity for some sort of 1031 exchange, some way to defer the tax liability on that transaction and convert that into something that's a greater value add. So I'm not going to be before you long. If there's other questions, business operations you have questions about, I'm not here to say I'm an expert. I just happen to have access to some folks that are paid for by the federal and state government that are, and are glad to answer those questions for you for free. Enjoy your experience today. If you haven't already become a member, I want to encourage you to do so today, and look forward to adding some more value to each of your businesses.
Thank you.
Someday maybe I can speak as well as Bernard. So I'm going to get ready to the main speaker. So please help me welcome Attorney Elias Fanous so he can talk about the courts and give us a great legal update.
Good evening, everyone. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Elias Fanous. My office is actually right back here in Gateway Center. I've been practicing landlord tenant predominantly since 2012. Obviously, our business in the landlord tenant business, and I have 7 rental units myself, so I'm kind of right there with you guys. Been dealing with everything that you guys have all been dealing with. We have seen a dramatic change in how landlord-tenant summary proceedings have been going on in the last 2 years. Obviously, with COVID, it's not been easy for anybody, landlords, attorneys, even tenants. Currently, the Supreme Court executive order is still in effect, so the way things are going right now is we still have to have a pre-trial before we can actually have a judgment entered or have a hearing on your landlord-tenant matters, whether it's a termination of tenancy or a non-payment of rent case. The hope is that the Supreme Court is looking at removing that executive order by the end of this month. There has been some whispers that that's going to happen, but nothing definitive yet. The SARA program, the portal is supposed to be closing at some point. The portal will be closing at some point this month. What that means for you, for anyone that has applications out right now, those are still going to be processed. But once that portal closes, there will be no more applications started. So if you have someone that's in the process right now, you should be okay. But if you're looking at taking someone to court right now, the odds are, if you don't get into court in the next couple of weeks, once that portal closes, you will not have the availability to go into the SARA program to recover money for your rental units. One thing that we've noticed in the last 2 years also is with the new judge, Judge Marsh is now, she took over Judge Perry's seat. We are seeing a lot of similarities with her to Judge Marable. So we're not quite to where Courtroom 1 is. It's not quite the show that Courtroom 1 is, but it's getting there. But she's willing to learn. That's the one thing that's different from her than him, she is willing to learn, and we have been receiving some good receptive feedback from her and her staff and trying how to make the process go smoother. If you have houses in the city of Flint, and you get drawn to Judge Crawford or Judge Quinn, you're gonna see your cases kind of processed a little bit quicker than you would with Judge Marsh or Judge Marable right now. The out counties are doing really well, Grand Blanc, Benton, Flushing, Mount Morris, Burton. Those are all still running relatively really smooth. Where we see the hiccups right now is in courtroom 1 and courtroom 4. But the process is yeah.
Does Judge Marsh take good direction from the court administrator or the chief judge? And then are we able to give our concerns as an organization to them?
So her staff has been listening to the attorneys. I can't tell you exactly if she's, taking direction, but she is open to trying to make her process a little bit faster, a little bit smoother. I think what we've seen from day 1 with her to now is night and day. So it is getting better. It's not quite where I would say it was with Judge Perry, for a certain example, but it's getting there. She is open to listening to what all parties have to say. She's listening to us attorneys, she's listening to the administration. Where we see that big difference right now is in the very beginning of COVID, especially when she took over, for example, is there was a case limit for her court. As of right now, my understanding is there's no more case limit for her court, but it's bogging down the docket. Everyone's docket is full right now. With respect to the out counties, they're not as bad, but in the city of Flint, everyone knows there's more landlord tenant actions filed in the city of Flint than anywhere else in Genesee County. What that means is we have attorneys filing 30, 40, 50, 60 cases a week, and it bogs down the docket. So it takes a lot longer for cases to be processed. For example, last week I filed 25 cases. I still don't have a court date yet for my clients because they're so bogged down with how many people are filing these actions. The big part of that is obviously due to COVID and Sarah, because what happens is when we have cases in the morning, which are all still being held via Zoom, that's relatively easy to manage. But in the afternoon docket, the city of Flint has said we have to be there in person. So now you're getting notices to show up in person, no more Zoom court for the afternoon docket. So now they have to figure out a way to stagger these cases. Instead of having 150 cases every Wednesday at 1:30, we see judges now are kind of staggering at 1:30 for a certain amount of numbers, 2 o'clock, 2:30, and 3, and then really they're supposed to be done by 4. The deputies at the courthouse have told the judges they need to be done with their docket by 4 o'clock, so they can clear the courthouse and get everyone home. It's not quite happening that way yet, but we're getting closer to getting that number, to that timeline. 4 o'clock, we gotta be gone. What I've been seeing anyways is it's kind of getting better, right? Things are running a little bit more smoothly. But it's still frustrating. As someone that's got houses and I'm trying to figure out, can my tenant pay rent this month? They can't, can I get them into Sarah? You don't know what to do. The Sarah program, while it's supposed to be easy, has not been easy. We've had so many problems with G-Card and Catholic Charities trying to figure out which houses they're in charge of and then trying to get all the right information to them, and then the right information to the tenant, to the landlord, to get everyone paid out. And it's just not as smooth as we'd like. Does anyone have any questions regarding the actual process that we're going through right now? From like filing to, getting a judgment or enforcement of that judgment.
Why don't you just do a high level?
Okay, so basically what we've been doing, what we've been seeing right now is once we file a landlord tenant action, we'll get a court date. And as many of you know, you gotta find your process server, and we have a great selection of process servers here in the area. Once we get that first court date, then what we're still stuck doing right now is running a pre-trial, which is just getting information from the tenant, seeing what's going on with their house, seeing what the landlord wants, and then we get a new court date. Now, usually we get the very next week. Sometimes it's been kicked out an extra week or a week after. What that executive order says, it has to be at least removed 1 week. But the judges, in their own discretion, rather, are sometimes kicking them out a little bit longer to give tenants a little bit more time to figure out what's going on and get into the SARA program. Once we have the next court date, then it's important that we communicate with our clients and the clients communicate with the attorneys as to what's going on, what the current balance is, what they want to do, whether or not they want to accept SARA. Because remember, you do not have to accept the SARA program. Once we get to the next date, in theory, we should be able to get a judgment for you, or what they do now is a conditional dismissal. With a conditional dismissal, you're basically agreeing to the tenant that you're going to remove the case from the docket as long as they abide by what you agreed to, whether it's paying rent or moving. What a lot of people don't understand is and I wish I would have brought a form with me, but on box 4A or 4B, it's a very important distinction. On 4A, on a conditional dismissal form, if you see one, all right, you're basically telling the court, you're going to give the tenant notice if you're going to go back and ask the court to reinstall the case and issue a judgment and an order of eviction. You get that choice. What I would recommend is everyone to check box 4B, which basically means the tenant does not do what they say they're going to do. I.e., they're not going to pay, they don't pay the rent, or they don't move by a certain date. You get to file an immediate order of eviction with the court in order to reinstate the case and grant a judgment for you that same day without giving notice to the tenant, which saves you a week to 2 weeks.
Is that a special form that hasn't been typically around before COVID?
So prior to COVID, the legal services or legal aid have been using a similar form. Brian Smith, who was the head of housing before he moved, he is now back, but before he moved, he kind of created this form that basically said, we'll agree to dismiss the case so long as the tenant abides by what we agreed to. Now, when COVID started, the Supreme Court basically took that form and made it an SCAO form, an approved form by the Supreme Court that's used across the state of Michigan. The importance,
Do you have the number or where we can find it or the name of it?
Yep, so it's called a conditional dismissal form. So if you go to the Michigan Supreme Court's website, you can look and search up their court forms. And when you select the landlord-tenant heading, it's called a conditional dismissal. Right next to that form is the application order for eviction following a conditional dismissal, which is what you would file after the tenant doesn't do what they say they're going to do. It's the very next form down. But it's important that if you're going to fill out that form for your tenants, to mark 4B. Because at that point, it protects you and gives you a faster avenue to recovering possession of your property. Because what happens is the judge will sign that order of eviction right then and there. If that doesn't happen, what we've seen is with our writs, is the law says they have 7 days to return that writ from when it's filed to the processor. We all know, everyone in this room knows, it takes longer than 7 days. It just doesn't happen right now. Prior to COVID, we'd get them back in about 6. But right now, we've been seeing upwards of 21 days that certain judges will hold on to those writs. And it's frustrating because you're trying to recover possession of your home. You file the writ, you've paid for it, but you can't execute it because the judges are holding on to it. But when you file the conditional dismissal, that next form to revoke that dismissal and enter the automatic judgment in, they're supposed to sign that order of eviction right then and there, and it's attached to that form. So then you get it the same day.
Are those forms all statewide?
They are statewide. They are statewide. One thing we've seen outside of Genesee County is the legal services community outside Genesee County are going above and beyond that form. They've been filing jury demands on landlord-tenant actions. Now, we have no indication that's going to happen here in Genesee County. Legal services have actually been really good at working with us attorneys and various landlords to not get it to that point. But the next form down would be a jury demand. And what that does, it's going to bog everything else down. But that form is used across the state of Michigan. So when I go and represent clients in Jackson, or Pontiac, or Detroit, and 36 District Court is an absolute nightmare. But they all use those same forms and the same process.
Well, I said, are the court rules that we followed through 2019 still the law of the land, or have those all been amended to what we see now?
So it's a very tricky question, right? So the court rules are still the court rules, and that's what we're supposed to be following. But the executive order 2020-17 has basically amended them. And that's where we get this whole idea of a pretrial first, and then kind of the waiting game. And that's when we have the issue with not issuing writs for a long time, in the beginning of 2020, throughout 2021. The executive order basically superseded the court rules. And what we found is sometimes the judges sometimes will forget that.
But you know, of course you know, that once you get past the court, the county is long past the COVID problem. In other words, the courts may be the last vestige of anybody who does things differently because of COVID.
Right.
And it just seems to me that at some point, the emergency has to be over.
And that's, I think we're getting to that point. The whispers are the Supreme Court's going to remove that executive order. I mean, I also practice criminal defense, and we are having three jury trials a week right now, trying to get caught up on the criminal defense side of things. Because for the longest time, we couldn't even have a jury trial. So the circuit court, which kind of controls what the district court is doing, we're back to normal over there. I mean, if you walk into the courthouse, there's no requirement for a mask. There are jurors coming in every single day. We anticipate the district court's going to follow suit. I know Judge Odette is really pushing for that. Judge McCabe is also pushing for that. Judge Manley's pushing for that. Where we find a little bit of pushback is in the city of Flint. Because quite frankly, what it means is once this emergency is over, then it should be business as normal. Where we go into court the same day, no one shows up, there's a judgment, 10 days later, there's a writ. Do I think that's going to happen anytime soon? I think we'll find a blend of between the two.
But it is overdue, long overdue.
It's long overdue. Henry, you're absolutely right, it's long overdue. But I think what we're going to see is we'll still have that first pre-trial. I think the judges are really happy with the way it works, although it's frustrating. Because a lot of times you sit on Zoom for hours and hours and hours. If you go into Judge Goggins' courtroom on Zoom tomorrow morning at 8:30, there'll be 85 people waiting, and it takes them the whole morning to get through just that initial docket. If you go to Judge Marsh on Zoom, you'll be in the waiting room for 2 hours before they even get to you on a Wednesday morning. The judges that do the best, in my opinion, they handle Zoom is Judge Crawford and Judge Quinn handle it probably the best in the city of Flint. Odette does a really good job in Grand Blanc. I really haven't had much experience with Judge Manley, but she does a really good job as well. Where I cannot speak to is I can't speak to like Mount Morris. I don't go in Mount Morris anymore. So my Mount Morris filings happen in Burton. But I've heard good things about Judge Bay Haley and the way she conducts her landlord tenant docket. Where we see the most issues is obviously in the city of Flint. And it is frustrating. And not just for you guys, but it is for us attorneys as well.
We've had some people, I know some landlords in the room are getting into Airbnbs.
Okay.
Ever handled a case, or is this ever happening where someone's supposed to leave on Sunday and they don't leave, and they move into an Airbnb and they just, now you have to evict them because they don't leave?
Yeah,
Is that
so
a thing?
we haven't had it with Airbnb, but we've had it with hotels in the area.
Okay.
It's happened a number of times with hotels. What the best thing to do is you would file, obviously you could do it as a non-payment of rent case. Okay, you don't want to do it as a termination tenancy, because then you're agreeing there's a tenancy that was in place and it's not a tenancy. It's a part-time issue that you have. So what you do is you either file the non-payment of rent where they haven't paid you, or you can even, it depends on the situation, but you could call it a health and hazard, because now you can't get into the property to verify what's going on. Someone's moved in without your permission, you can't figure out what's going on. The other option is you turn them into a trespasser. You send them a letter, and with a trespassing complaint, the day you send the letter, the next day you can file the complaint for recovery of possession of your property. So if you do an Airbnb or if you are renting for a certain amount of time, what I would strongly suggest is that you find something in your lease or add an addendum to the lease that says if you stay beyond this, you are considered a trespasser. It's not required in the trespassing statute to do that, but it bolsters your case. It bolsters the ability for you to recover possession of your house. Yeah,
So can I use the trespassing one with a squatter?
absolutely. Absolutely. So technically in Michigan, if there is a squatter, there aren't squatter rights. So in theory, you can go and evict them that same day, but I never suggest you do that. Use a trespassing letter, send it out, and then file the complaint. Because what you don't want to have happen is you go in there and remove them from the property, and then they file a lawsuit against you for a wrongful eviction, or you broke something, or you, God forbid, hurt them. It's always better to let the court process run its course. It's frustrating, but it's the best way to go.
So I didn't totally understand that. How would you evict them if there's a squatter? Let's say you bought a house and there's a squatter in it, how would you evict them right away?
You would just send a processor over there to just throw their stuff out.
Okay.
I mean, there aren't squatter rights in Michigan. Technically, you can actually do that if they're deemed a squatter. But what do you run into? What's the biggest problem you run into? Well, how do you know they're a squatter? And what's the court going to say if they file an action against you? Well, you didn't know I was a squatter. So the best thing to do is to send them a trespassing letter. The next day, file the complaint to recover possession of your property. There is no 7-day waiting period. There's no nothing. It's immediate. You send a letter, send a certified mail, or you can tape it to the door. What I tell people is tape it to the door. Take a picture with your cell phone. You can use that in court. Say, this is the picture, this is the date and time that I put it on the door. I don't know who's living there. I feared for my safety. I wasn't going to walk in. You do that, the next day file a complaint. And call it John Doe and all occupants.
Just, would it be beneficial to actually hire a process server to do that? So you could document the trespass sign that's done by a court officer?
Sure, yeah, you can absolutely do that.
Okay.
You can absolutely do that.
That's just immediately go to the.
It shields you from a little bit of extra liability, absolutely, you can do that. What I tell my clients is give me the address, I'll send the letter certified mail from my office. You know, when I go before the courts, the judges all know me. When I say I send something, I send it. And they know there's no issues, I'm not muddying the waters. They know what's gonna come from our office.
Do you have a phone number?
810-238-1700.
That's the same number you used to have?
No, the old number was 810-234-8051,
You got some card with you, right?
in my car.
Yeah.
I rushed back over here, I had to pick up my kid from daycare and get him over to my mom's house.
Can you repeat one more time?
I'm sorry, could you,
What's the number? 810
1700.
So, when you file the paperwork on the trespasser,
Yep,
and then you can go and record that the next day,
absolutely. You can go and file it the very next day.
and then the court has to issue the processor to evict a victim, right?
No, so you're basically going to court in the summary proceedings. So when you go to court and file, then you wait a week to get into court before one of the judges you get drawn.
Yeah.
And then it's just you're recovering possession of your property.
But you said you have the processor evict, throw their stuff out.
Once you get the writ. What I was saying is if you
Right,
didn't,
okay.
technically you could just have the server go out and throw
You're
it
just
out.
fast forwarding a little bit.
Right, but you don't really want to do that because you want to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Which forms do you use to file?
So you'll use a normal complaint to recover possession of property. And then it's box F on the complaint for trespasser, and then you have to write a little snippet at the bottom. And what I tell people is write, no lawful tenancy exists. And then you attach a copy of the letter to your pleadings. Does anyone else have any other questions? Yes, sir.
When
when the judges don't sign the writs timely in violation of the court rule, what remedies does the landlord have?
You could file a complaint with either the Supreme Court Administration Office, or you can file a complaint with the Chief Administrator down at the District Court. So if you're in the city of Flint, you want to get a hold of Kim Davis, you can call up there or go up there and ask for her. And, you know, Kim has been fantastic about looking up cases, especially, you know, when we're filing in bulk and we don't have copies back for 2-3 weeks. She's been a great resource to see what the status of your case is. Truthfully though, if they're not signing them, technically, you know, they're supposed to issue them right away. There's not a whole lot we can do. You don't really want to burn that bridge if you have many cases in front of a particular judge. So you just kind of grit your teeth and take it, unfortunately. But if you make enough noise, usually they'll sign them.
Once they sign, judge signs the writ and then disappears, gets lost.
I'm sorry, so the question is what if the judge signs the writ and the writ disappears?
It disappears.
Well, if that happens, it should be recorded in the ROA, the Register of Action. So if it's there, because you'll see there, it'll say file to judge for signature. Then it'll say, after the judge has signed it, it'll say file to return to the clerk. If it says file to return to the clerk, if they don't have it, you should ask them to reissue it. Send another writ, and they should not charge you for that. If they charge you for that again, contact Kim Davis. Because you've already paid that $15 filing fee for the order of eviction. If they lose it, you shouldn't have to pay for it. That it should all be recorded on the Register of Action. And you can find that at 67dc.com and go to the court schedule or court records inquiry. You can see all that on there. And that'll give you access to, you know, any case in Genesee County in the district court. And so if you want to see if your tenant has gone through an eviction before, someone, you know, sending you a new application, that's a great first resource. Put their name in there and see how many times they've gone through eviction. But it's all there in the city of Flint and Genesee County.
Could you repeat that site again?
It's 67thdc.com.
That's the site you go to check and see if they're.
Yep, that's the website for the 67th District Court.
67, one more time, 67.
thdc.com. If you have any more questions, feel free to call me. Again, my office is right back here in Gateway Center. I'm in the Shaheen Law Firm building. I have my secretary works Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So obviously Wednesdays are the worst days possible to call because we're in court all day long. But if you call, leave a message, we'll get back to you within 24 hours. Thank you for allowing me to come and speak to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out, Elias. Our next meetup is going to be here May 26th at 6:30. That's a Thursday, like they always are. And do you guys have any? Does anybody else have any other random questions that you want to ask? That you'd like to ask? Potentially get an answer for myself or another board member before we close the meeting. You got a room full of. And you got Henry back there. He owns half of Genesee County, so he probably has some answers for you. If he doesn't have an answer, he sure got one hell of an opinion.
I'll make one up.
Nothing? Well, thank you guys for coming out tonight, and you guys have a nice night.
Hold it, Ed, hold it. 50-50.
Oh, yeah, I got 50-50.
Come on, man. I'm winning today.
So to page 35 bucks, the last four digits are 5886. So 5886. Ryan won. Drinks are on him. You didn't win too, did you?
Yeah, I did. I left my reading glasses.
You were D583.
You know what?
You're only 50 off.
Well, I left my glasses. David's just the guy that goes to the raffle.